Thank you, everyone, for joining us today here on West Fox. I'm your host, and I'm joined by Christopher here. Hello. A quick little announcement. Sorry, we had some recording issues, and the video didn't record for the first about 30 minutes of it. So you'll have our audio, but no video for a little bit. And then you'll get to see our amazing smiling faces at you after that. I'm sorry you're going to miss out on all the fun of, bottle opening, all that good stuff. At the beginning there, it didn't record. But what we did was too good to not just let it be and redo it. So thank you, and we will join you back in the live section here in about 30 minutes. All right. And we are talking My Hero Academia today. And it's an exciting show because for once in a rare time, it feels like we are not complaining. We are actually not complaining. We complain a lot, and so we're super excited to be like, I'm super excited about this being a great episode. And we're talking about the most recent, not the most recent episode, but episode 76 of season 4 of My Hero Academia. For the season to be season 13. This will be a spoiler-heavy discussion, so if you have not watched the episode and you don't want to be spoiled, I would say go watch the episode or catch up to it because it is a combination of the entire season's arc so far coming together. So it's super solid. So to celebrate that, I have a delicious bottle of sake here, and usually I have tea with my anime reviews, but today we're gonna do a little bit of sake because that is how good this episode was and deserves. So enjoy that. Should I just top it off? I'm just kidding. Yes.
Well, don't worry, Joe, because one of us has got tea. So I do have my tea.
Excellent.
Just a nice ginger tea.
We do have some tea then as well. But this was one of those episodes. So I guess background for me on this series is I can't say I started watching this show at the beginning when it came out. I'm definitely I started watching around season 2. When I first saw it, usually broadcast, it kind of had, especially against the marketing. I consider actually, this show is much better than the American marketing is for it. When it comes to Adult Swim is usually where I see the ads for it. The Adult Swim seems kind of like they always do like the punching ad. They're like, this is a fighting show. And so it's very like that Shonen Dragon Ball Z, which is a brand that I just never grew up with. I knew people that watched in high school and middle school, but it was one of the shows that I never watched. So this show kind of fell into that genre for me mentally from the marketing of, Cartoon Network, Adult Swim. And then some people I knew recommended I should check it out. And so I was like, you know what? I respect your opinion. I am going to check it out. And I was exceptionally pleasantly surprised that it is a fighting show on some level, but it has great characters, great character development, and I think this season has the strongest character development, or maybe not even character development, has the strongest characters in it, and with motivations and plot points that I feel are exceptional, and they not only have created exceptional characters, but they are using these characters in exceptional ways. So not only do we have great characters, great backstory, and great moments put together, we actually have high stakes that feel real, which I think a lot of shows don't have anymore. A lot of times these characters are put in situations that make you feel like, oh, okay, they're going to get out of it, no scrap. Especially in the larger scope of anime where you have kind of an overpowered protagonist. Now, granted, Deku on a lot of levels is overpowered protagonist, but at least he's facing characters that are also highly overpowered. In fact, Overhaul, as through the episode goes, is insanely powerful character. I'm not sure if he's juicing in it. Again, I know there's the manga, and I don't read the manga for it. I don't know if he's in this point he was like juicing up like he did with the other guys in there. But he seemed like he was absorbing people's souls, so it seemed like it was his upgrade in that part, or not really their soul, but their physical being. So I don't know if that helped him. They didn't really explain that, but he was just sucking people into him, and it was becoming more powerful. So he is an insanely powerful character inside of it, and so I'll stop there before we get, and I'll let Christopher do his opening thoughts on this. I'm sure I'll have more too, because like I said, it's super exciting to talk about a show that I really like. And it's also super exciting talking about an episode that just hits you so hard in the feels, and something that I love when that does happen, because like I said, it's just so pleasant. It's like almost cathartic. You're like, oh, I had something I enjoyed and it wasn't ruined. And like, you could just end the show now and I'd be sad, but at least I'd be like, oh, it's content and happy. Compared to sometimes you feel like, oh no, stop doing it. But so go ahead, Christopher. What are your thoughts so far?
Well, so far my thoughts would be, obviously Joel, you were the one that said, hey, I've had a few other people say, go ahead and watch My Hero Academia. And finally kind of getting into it. The 4 seasons at least that shows through on Funimation as it's set up. I think I binge watched those seasons in about 3 days altogether. From when you started it, I actually restarted even season 1, even though I had watched it before, just to kind of get myself back into it. And like you're saying, yeah, I would definitely agree. This latest episode 76, is a culmination of a lot of the small things or the buildups of characters, character development, character motivations, world building, just bringing it to an apex that, even as much as like I've said for a while, I think that the writing in anime is leaps and bounds ahead of what is done in Western writing. Especially when it comes to characters a lot of times, and that idea. And I understand there's certain medias that's, animes like to pull a lot from, they get to a character development and there's usually a flashback. And I understand that not every movie can do that or show can do that. It doesn't work as well. But that being said, you're always involved with the characters. And this episode, the build up before, and I have to go a few episodes before, just like that basic part, because like you're saying, for Overhaul, one of those first times meeting him, at least as the heroes meeting him, is that, I gotta say, ballsy scene for an anime to pull, because I don't even see some of that stuff. I wouldn't even see this particular scene I'm going to go into. I mean, in certain live action, even, you might not even see something like that in Law and Order.
And which was not, just to be specific, what scene are you specifically referencing?
The scene I'm talking about is the first time that Lemillion and Deku run into Arya.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe that's her name, yeah.
And Overhaul. And that whole scene gave me so much tension that I haven't felt in a lot of different stuff. But it's like that whole moment, she runs on up, Deku's talking to her, and then she grasps his suit, and she doesn't want to let go. And that whole interaction between all 4 of them is, like I said, that's ballsy. That was ballsy to me to have that kind of scene of him saying, I can't let this girl go. I don't want to do this. And again, bringing in so much emotion that obviously leads into this episode, because once they find out that the girl that Lemillion and Deku let go is being abused beyond abused.
Yeah, that episode definitely brings in that extra element. I actually was, when I first saw the character, I know I'm interrupting, so I apologize, but I know when I first saw the character, so I can remember going back to kind of a little earlier in this season, I was kind of concerned she was going to be the annoying girl child or the damsel in distress type character who is more a hindrance to herself. And she kind of is, but I will say they explain the reason.
Yes.
And what she was put through on such a level. I know I brought this up to you when we were kind of doing our preview chat yesterday, that we don't really know how old she is, because she's a child, but he seems like, in the context of what it doesn't seem like it. He literally says it. He's been rebuilding her and tearing her apart and rebuilding her when he needs to kind of reset her. So she could actually be as old as Deku in these groups. I don't think she would be much older, but she could be even in her 20s for all we know. The actual age of her.
And just due to the consistent breaking down and rebuilding, it's always bringing her back to one of the first times she was probably ever broken down.
Yeah, or every 6 months rebuilding and type. Yeah, so that's kind of like on a legitimately a legitimate character point. That's terrifying. Like,
oh yeah,
like you're not just in prison with this guy. He's not just imprisoned you. He is literally destroying you piece by piece and rebuilding you to be his tool. That is
his weapon. I mean, and I think that's like I said, for a show to actually do that. And like I said, and they let it be. And that was the thing about it. And the thing was too, they didn't have that moment and then kind of go, okay, but now let's try to lighten it up. Like then you have the whole scene of all of them talking about it in that office room, and it's like,
and it was
and
good
you feel for
discussion.
all of them.
Good discussion. You know, I don't feel like this season to me has been like I said, if you haven't watched this season, you got to watch this season because
Yes,
it's interesting too that we have less of the older main cast in this one. There's a few features. I know you mentioned Red Riot is you were really
Correct.
impressed with in it, but
Yes.
there's far less parts of it that, apologize, the doggy barking. But you had mentioned Red Riot as a solid character, and so he's one of the few that they had kind of brought in from the main group of students, and I think that's been so far to the show's positive. Now, granted, I wouldn't want to remove the characters completely, but it's been nice to have them on their kind of own higher level, higher stakes adventure here.
Yes.
And that's been really cool. And I think the addition of Lemillion, I know that there's in the Weeb Wars, there is the discussion of best boy, or, you know, I guess it'd be a husbano. I don't know, depending on your preference, or I guess depending on the war you're fighting at the moment, you know, the best character type thing. I'm a person who can like multiple characters at once and not hate on one.
Yes.
I think that Lemillion's to Deku's character arcs and character differences is what makes him so great, because we've had Bakugo for so long, who kind of grates on me majority of the time. He gets a little overused, his angriness, because I think he needs a good smackdown and some things. I'm hoping that when he comes back here in the rest of this season, I'm sure that he is toned down a bit. I don't mind it occasionally, but I think sometimes I'm glad he's not turned into a villain, though. I was glad it didn't turn into a villain.
Yes. No, I agree with that. Well, and it's kind of interesting because really between those three characters, between Bakugo, Lemillion, and Deku, a lot of their inner motivations actually is the same, which you actually see. It's like, I mean, honestly, all of them want to be the number one hero for altruistic reasons, truly. Like, none of them have a bad reason. And it's just interesting then that all three of them, the way that they go through it and how their behaviors are is
interesting,
different,
for sure.
and it's always a cool dynamic, because it's cool that first you're having the Deku Bakugo at first fighting, then you understand like where Bakugo's coming from, and then it's like, okay, so you kind of understand each other, but they're still kind of each other's foil.
Yeah, no, that's definitely.
And then you get Lemillion, who then isn't a foil to Deku. He is he's different than him, because he truly is kind of more, his similarities obviously comes down to, first off, his determination, because between him, the same way that Deku is trying to learn how to use All for One, Lemillion had to work hard to understand how to use his phasing ability to be as great as a hero as he's already then become so far. And I love that it's like, so for him then it's cool because then Deku gets to see Lemillion more as, I think, kind of a stepping stone. Instead of being a foil for a change, he gets to see him as a stepping stone.
I would say a positive rival. I don't think that,
a good way to put it.
I don't think that Deku they kind of addressed at the end of the last season, you know, with hey, they're on a positive rivalry now. We'll see how positive that is. I would call Deku and Lemillion's rivalry legitimately positive one. That's because he's a good guy, and so that's what's so cool about, you know, kind of, we have this combination of characters, right? We have, and it's why this makes this scene so powerful, is we start out with, you know, this season starts out with a new doubt being created for Deku, which is he worthy? Is he actually the one that's worthy to have inherited All Might's power? Because in the end, he could always give up his power, or at least from what I know in the canon, he could always give up his power if he chose to. So he could be like, you know what, this goes to the next person early. But I don't think that's obviously the point of the story either. So, but I love that this created, through Night Eye's interaction with him, created some doubt. And the other cool thing is the character that he was picking is legitimately good. Like, you're like, oh, you know, I don't know if I've ever experienced.
Right. There's not a sense that as you, the audience, then is, you're not angered by why Night Eye wanted it to be Lemillion.
Yeah,
right?
you're
It's
like, oh,
there isn't any frustration in that, or going like, oh, or like you're saying like, oh, well, this one's more of like, this one's a hot-headed kind of jerk, and why does he really go in this way? It's like, it's not. It's like you kind of look at both of them, you go, you honestly both deserved it, because again, both of them at their core is all about determination, perseverance, and
helping people,
continuing to grow themselves.
Mm-hmm. And
obviously,
being a hero.
Obviously, Midoriya didn't have powers at first, but then once he does, like I said, he is working obviously throughout the rest of the seasons to try to hone that power. And like I said, then you and I think that's what makes sense as to why Night Eye saw probably exactly that within Lemillion, because like I said, again, with his phasing ability, he has worked tirelessly. He has continued to better himself to be a better human being, a better hero, a better everything. And so you sit there and you go, okay, you're not mad at that being a choice, or like kind of making like, and it makes it harder for you as an audience member, because you kind of also agree with it. You understand the doubt that Deku has.
Right. So to me, what made this episode so in the sense of what made this episode so amazing to me, like I said, I literally almost had a tear. I mean, I might have had a little tear, to be honest. It was that good when the end of this one happens. And what I loved was the moment that, get heavy spoilers here. So the premise is Night Eye can see the future, and the future he sees is pretty much unchangeable. And so he has seen in this part of the battle that Deku is going to die, and that pretty much all of them are going to die at the hands of Overhaul.
Yes.
And so you have this combination of character moments where I have my little list here because there's so many little things. We have, the girl who's scared to be saved with her. We have Night Eye with, who sees the unchangeable future. We have Deku with the self-doubt, Lemillion with the regret, and actually Deku has this regret too, not being able to save her earlier.
Yes.
And you have these couple characters together, all with these perceptions of reality around them, and they're not just like randomly, like they're legit perceptions. Like I said, they're not things that are like, oh, well, you could have done this and just think differently type thing, or that kind of common trope that's like, oh, if only I saved her. Because again, the way they view it is they're like, oh, we want to save the girl, and it wasn't like, oh, we could have saved her. Most likely, Lemillion made the right call when he said, hold up, because they would have died. What we've seen of this Overhaul character, they would have died. So
yes, which was obviously, was clearly shown then by that final moment where he puts his hand in like to grab into his glove, and Ari just then immediately takes off and goes, I know if I stay here, you will die. You will die. And she walks away that quickly. And again, that's why like that scene for me was so tense, because I was like, I don't know how they were going to end that scene. I really was sitting there going, is this going to go into a battle? Are they really going to let her go? Because I was like, and it's like for any cartoon show or any show like that, just again, that makes me so happy, because it's like feeling that kind of feeling of tension from these characters and going, I don't, and that's what made it tough for me too, is because in that moment, I was sitting myself going, which one is right? Which one would I do if I was Deku or Lemillion? Which character do you actually, as the audience member, which one do you want to agree with? And it's like, you have to agree with both, because it's like, I agree with both of them, because it's like, I understand, obviously, Lemillion's like, there's something bigger going on here, and this can get us killed. But then I also completely understand Deku's side of, are we not heroes? Is our job not to help people? To, I think what was the line they say, like to insert ourselves into situations that we shouldn't be in, or that you wouldn't think we are. That's the purpose of a hero. So you had both of those going on at that same moment, and you're like, and it's Ari then the one who initiates that tension, is then the one realizing that her actions are going to get someone else killed.
Yeah,
removes that tension by then running away
and seeing how powerful the guy is. You're like, oh, yeah, she's right. So, I guess that's our opening thoughts. I know it's quite a lot of opening thoughts. So we'll kind of get into the episode itself. I was kind of worried to begin this episode because it shows the other characters outside the house, location starting out. I'm like, oh no, side story in the middle of the important battle. I'm like, no, don't. It shows them interacting. So you kind of get into it. They have the fight with the one guy who kind of sucks their soul out. So I'm just kind of scrolling through some of the stuff.
Right.
It's interesting. And then you have your opening, blah, 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 blah. And then they have a little bit of the League of Villains stuff going on, which is kind of, The League of Villains wasn't nearly as terrifying as this guy was, which is interesting. I know this arc was very popular in the manga from what I know in a sense of it. And I see why, because this one, it lets the League of Villains almost watch another terrifying being be in the space.
I mean, you kind of get that. You get that sense of. I mean, it's kind of like that moment between the League of Villains and with Overhaul. It's kind of like Overhaul walks in and goes, "I seen what you guys have done. Hold my beer."
Yeah, a little bit, and also in the sense of, at least those three that were there. The girl who I forget their names, without pulling them up.
You have Twice, the guy,
the magic guy, and the girl.
Himori.
Yeah, you're on the right. Yeah, I'm really bad with some of the names pronunciations.
Oh, I mean, there's a lot of names in this one too. I'm like trying to half the reason I know Bakugo and Midoriya
because they say
more
the
fact because All Might always says their name and he always
Midoriya.
goes like, young Midoriya, and it's always like, okay, I can remember it because of that.
It's true. I think that's why they do it. But you have them who are. It's interesting because their motivations were following the Blade guy, which is I just spaced his name. The killer guy who killed.
The hero killer, Stain.
Stain. That's I was like, Blade's not Blade. Stain. So their motivation was, granted, it's a little wonky, but their motivation is based on his kind of philosophy. I'm actually interested if they would actually kill Deku.
Lightly based, because clearly Stain had a lot. Clearly, Stain's motivation is a lot deeper than I will admit that I think the show gets into. Like they kind of touch on a little bit, but it's like. He clearly didn't like heroes more because he saw them as false idols, and because so many of them are.
Yeah, he
whereas
like
I think like his now disciples, Twice in them, are more just like, we just like killing heroes, and you're like, okay, but that wasn't exactly why Stain was doing what he's doing. Like you clearly see that Stain's reasoning was more of, if you're gonna be a hero, you should actually be a hero. Don't be this fake poser who just runs around pretending to save people. If you're gonna be a hero, then you should act and embody a true hero.
So yeah, the question would she actually? She's tried to kill him, but the question would she kill him? Because I know she's obsessed with him, with Deku. But the question is, the one person Stain said you don't kill was Deku.
Yes, it was Deku and All Might. That's the only two he goes. Like, the only person who can kill me is All Might. And he goes, you know what? You can't kill him. I think he is a true hero.
So yeah, that's interesting to me. I would, like I said, I would put Lemillion in that space too. There's a couple, like I said.
Oh yes.
As that. In the sense of that philosophy. But anyway, they're kind of just causing a little bit of chaos throughout the beginning of the episode. And then we kind of get into what I think is, the fight. But I love the moment because the realization for her, you have the kind of like the flashback scenes and kind of everyone talking. And I loved her. Like I said at the beginning of this, I wasn't sure how I was going to like her or not. I was like, oh, I don't know if she's going to be, but then she turned out to be a character that's actually thinking. I think that's why I end up liking her, is she's thinking. Like, because a lot of times these characters fall into like this kind of like, they follow the flow of the moment.
Right.
But
she's a damsel because she has to be a damsel, and that's the only motivation. There's no, until she's no longer a damsel because of circumstances from other people.
Yeah, and this one
that's not her in this.
Yeah, she shows that she has some level of tragic backstory. She killed her dad accidentally, erased her dad. And you're like, oh, and then her thing where she's like, okay, I'm going to take your hand. I freaking love that moment. Let's see, when she says, I'll take your hand, and she starts unleashing her power, I freaking love that. Oh, just yes,
goosebumps.
Yeah, so good. And I was like, and then when he starts realizing he's healed in this part, and he's like, what? And I was like, because I didn't know it. It said, I can switch reverse time. And so I wasn't sure if that was going to reset us back in the episode. But they used this kind of time thing, which will be interesting that we'll get to later in the whole Night Eye thing. It's reversing his kind of physicality. Because it doesn't reverse his mind because he still has his memory. So I'm curious, as a side note, I'm curious if this will... in some way heal all his other wounds from things that he's done to his body throughout the entire
so you
seasons?
mean like his arms that like couldn't take any more than like 3 more 100 powers, so that's actually gonna be
maybe.
I wasn't even thinking that. What my thought was actually more of, because currently at this moment they said that Lemillion lost all his powers.
Yes, I think that's how they bring his back.
She was going to be able to heal him.
Yeah,
that was actually my bigger was, the way that you're making it sound like she might be able to save him. and bring back his powers, which obviously I want, because it's like I don't want Lemillion's story to end with him being depowered there. I mean, it's the ultimate hero sacrifice for him, but I don't want to see that be his heroic end. I hope it's not. Like I said, I don't know the manga.
Totally agree. Yeah, I don't know the story.
Like, so I want to see him continue.
If you read the manga and you know what happens, don't tell me. Because
don't comment on that.
I actually care about what happens with these characters, even if it sucks. But I like them.
If you guys want to spoil Picard or something else, that's fine. But don't spoil our animes. Don't tell me what happens in the manga.
Don't ruin our anime shows. We like our anime shows.
Yeah, we actually like those.
And it's actually one of the genres, like, because I plan on doing, again, side note, lots of little side notes here. Put a pin in it. On the anime front, I generally don't watch things I don't like. So when I do reviews on stuff, it's generally going to be relatively positive, or just like first thoughts, because there's so many shows when it comes to anime. If it's a crap show, I'm just not going to watch it. Sometimes that in the sci-fi world, and like things like Picard, where you're like, oh, these shows have been around for 30, 40, 50, 60 years, Doctor Who, I'll care more. Doctor Who's killed me. I don't even watch Doctor Who anymore.
Well, sad, and admittedly too, though, it's like obviously for most of those other things, we grew up more as a child watching them, whereas anime for us has been, I'd say, for all three of us, clearly has been more our adult lives. I mean, the closest thing we had to quote unquote anime was watching Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Right? Like that. Yeah, that's the closest. Yeah, and obviously
that would be the closest.
It is the closest. So anyway, we have that part, and then you have this thing where she grabs onto him. That's why I got up on the screen right now. She grabs onto him, and like I said, just the feels, man. The feels, the moment, the fight stuff looks so good. The animation here is amazing. Her inner monologue, his inner monologue, so good. Yep. And then you had this thing where, where does that happen here? Comes up here, and he's in the air, and he's realized he's like been healed, or I think it was before that, but he's healed, and he's like, whoa. And I love this thing where essentially she turns into a battery pack for him, like in an awesome way, where he's like, so the only way for me not to get hurt right now is to go full power against this guy. And I also loved earlier in the episode too, I know I'm just jumping around, when he's like, 20%, I'm like, yes, 20%. And you're like, do it. I'm like, yes, we're up in the numbers. Cause I mean, it was at like 3% season 3, I think. So I'm like, oh my God.
Because he's been at 5% for long of it. I think he's 5% arms still, but he's able to do 8% on his legs up until that point. He's like, think he did 20% it. And you're like, oh.
You're like, yes. Yeah. I know, it really is. It's totally a nerdy thing. Like I said, it's because we know, again, it's good power capping in the sense of, it's almost like in a video game where you have your character at full power for like the first mission, and then they lose their powers. I think, didn't KOTOR do that in the second game? I feel like maybe.
No, KOTOR, no.
There was some other game. It was something like that where your character is like full out powered, maxed out, and then you lose your powers and you're like slowly building up. And I feel like that's kind of with Deku, is you're like, okay, we know he's going to hit All Might level, and actually higher than even we've ever seen All Might, because even late in the movie they show that All Might was at probably like 75%. I'm guessing, I forget exactly, but they had the graph. Did you ever see the movie?
No, I haven't seen the movie.
So the movie, it's a side movie. It doesn't.
The two heroes? Is that two heroes?
Yeah, it's a side movie. It doesn't really affect the main story. But the guy is kind of tracking All Might's strength from when he got injured, and I think
so he's seeing that it's gone down a little bit. Obviously.
Yeah, so I think he was at like 75. And again, I could be wrong on that number exactly, but there was a graph. He was definitely less powerful than he was at his peak. So
right.
Deku at his peak should be stronger than All Might theoretically, because he's a next generation. Or he could be equal to All Might. I don't know how they work it. It's since Deku didn't have any power, I don't know if there's some level of like increase generationally, even if it's just purely inherited. Right. Just because being,
or like just since the fact that it's like, since that's his one power that he's able to then truly focus on it more, then he can kind of up the ante of that power just in general.
Possibly,
like,
yeah. You can do a lot
of adding my new power. It's like I'm getting to, really.
Mm-hmm. I know what you're saying. Yeah, it's almost like you're refining. He's almost refined. You could definitely use that in the story. He gets to refine
what everyone else has created so far and really package it well, because he's not adding to. Now he gets to condense.
And that always goes into the element of, there's always theories out there, which Deku maybe does have a power, but it's something different. And this episode, if there was an episode that made me think you could explain away some things with that, would be this episode. Then the reason is because obviously the moment that literally gave me the most feels was when Night Eye's realization that
History's changed.
that he was able to change history, that he changed the future
Change
from
the
what
future,
he saw.
possibly. The
And
possible future.
That freaking moment, man. Oh, so good. Because
it's like, obviously they don't. I mean, again, shows the strength of it. But it's like you realize in that moment, obviously as an audience member, you're seeing him obviously happy for the situation at hand, but you clearly know to him, the bigger part of it was not the fact that yes, Deku saved. The bigger part to him is All Might might not have to die then. That horrific death at the hands of a beastly enemy that he says. And you know that's like is him going, if this could be changed, can I change that? This can be changed.
And, and that's why it's so good. So good. I love it so much. And so, yeah, that moment there when his realization of that was so good. So I don't know if the reason Deku, and again, it kind of just justifies Deku as being what he is a little bit. Hopefully this gives him some ability to have less doubt in himself.
I hope so. Or at least in the sense, too, that I'm hoping that Night Eye might not then say, like, completely change his heart about him, but obviously kind of go, there's clearly something.
Yes,
there's clearly something there.
And so the question to me is the reason they were able to change it the combination of the girls' power and Deku working together, essentially her being able to reset him and kind of it, but I think the moment that changes it, so it's interesting because you can look at it in a couple different ways for it, and they're all kind of cool ways. So the first way is that his tenacity and his desire to save her, like, converted her, and like that was this little change that changed the future, right? So this because that little change in her heart through his and Lemillion's tenacities in wanting to save her, and they're kind of like literally like agape type love, right? Almost like they're like agape type heroes, right? So like in Greek, it's like unconditional love. So they're almost like agape heroes. They're like, we have unconditional heroing, and that she reacted to those two working together. And that's like that. I do not discount Lemillion's role in that part either. Just
no, not at all.
Those two together, Deku could not have done this alone in that sense. This was definitely the two of them working together, and they're both of theirs hard work and drive his personalities.
Because what you got to see was in the prior episode where Deku first runs into her, you see the heart of a hero in Deku. And then in episode 76, or the few episodes before, you see the hero's struggle, the hero's strength, the hero's resolve in Lemillion. Mm-hmm. So she got to see then the care and the heart of Deku, and seeing like there's people who care and will care. So you kind of go almost in the sense like you saw the dialogue with Deku kind of, and then she got to see it in action with Lemillion saying, Deku kind of said this is who we are, and I'm going to prove it. I'm going to act up to it. And it was beautiful to see that, because it like you said, there's no way that one or the other would have been able to do it, because she needed both. She needed to realize that there was people who cared about her, because obviously Overhaul's whole thing is you kill everyone, you've destroyed everyone, you are a curse. And Deku's coming in saying you are not a curse, because I think is it Lemillion or Deku actually says you're not a curse. There's nothing about you that would ever be a curse. I can't remember if that's, but it's like, but even. But either way,
no, yeah, no. It was, I think it was Deku, because that was the end there when Lemillion was out of the hall, I think. Doing that part. So I don't think that that would have done it.
No, exactly. But that's where, like I said, it definitely was a team effort between, like I said, I think she got to see the heart of a hero within Deku, and she got to see the resolve of a hero acting up to what the heart, what that kind of heart of a hero should be in Lemillion. And from that, it was finally that decision of, I can change. I can make this change. I can. Well, I mean, I think what's even cooler is almost in that sense, she changes from, and almost in that last moment, from being the damsel in distress to being the hero.
Yeah,
I mean,
no, there's definitely some truth to that for sure. Because
truly, in the end, it's her actions that do save Deku, and that's what I think is also interesting, because it's like Lemillion and Deku are trying to save her, and they do, but almost the way they save her is by her realizing that she can save them, and also realizing kind of the hero's heart.
All right. Hello and welcome back to the actual visual part of this presentation. We are now actually live. Before we were not, because I was testing something new out because we had a glitchy thing last time and I didn't want it to happen, and well, that was totally my fault. I messed up. So it happens. We got the audio. We record that separately, and that's why we do it, because one thing
We're not
messes
perfect, but we're getting there.
Darn it, right? Gosh, how am I not perfect yet? I'm old.
What is this?
And I wasn't even drinking yet. Goodness gracious. All right. So the other great scene, the animation. So we were just talking about that thing, but just one note too. The animation in this episode is amazing. It looks great. There's choices, like the whole thing when he's punching like 100 punches in a row. Let me try to find that frame on here if I can find it. It was pretty short. It was pretty freaking epic. I think it's right after here.
I'd say the only more epic version of that kind of multiple punch is like the one punch animations when he's just like 1,000 consecutive small punches.
Right. No, totally.
But then again, One Punch Man is on a totally different level as an anime because it is meant to be
over the top,
ridiculous and over the top.
Exactly. Overall, it gets terrifying in here, by the way. So, you know, when he starts absorbing everybody into like this giant mass of flesh around in that 13.
And then he's able to use their powers when he takes them on, correct? Because he kind of wasn't he? Was he or was he not?
I couldn't say for sure because it just seemed like he's rebuilding. Like, I guess it was some level.
Because he technically was rebuilding, like, you know, like he was making the pillars again, which was kind of the other guy's ability. Maybe
he was like using their DNA inside of his own thing to manipulate it. It's hard to say. It was really, again, it was so good and creepy. I also love the shot when he has his like hair blown back. I didn't even like said this whole like his power when he's like almost this green lightning thing in the visual of it. So freaking cool. So then they fly up in the thing. They're all doing their thing. The peripheral team members are helping out. But again, this was about these guys. I mean, that's what this was about. Deku taking it. There's a little bit of backstory for Overhaul, but it's really just cementing him as kind of a more crazy dude. He's just kind of like, he's on a mission, but he's crazy. He's crazy. And also just psycho. I mean, that's kind of a part of it, but dark psycho.
Yes.
So I love the thing when he does I was trying to find the million punch thing. So freaking cool, the shot. There it is. Yeah, he does this whole thing where it's like, not a million, but like, just, I think he's just doing a couple big punches or just one punch. But the animation just is cool. Like I said, it's just stunning. Across the board, this episode's stunning. Again, that's why, you know, it's like I said, it's so exciting when you get an episode that I'm like, oh my goodness. And again, I feel like I get this more in anime. I think it's why it's becoming a more popular medium, is because there's so many exciting moments in it. And there's things that are like, still hype me. And I'm, like I said, getting older and less things make me hype. But there's things in anime that make you go, yes, that's sick and beautiful. And oh my God, I love it.
Well, I remember the first scene that I sent you from this show from when I was watching it. I think it was episode 23. I'm trying to remember if it's
that was
Bakugo. I think Bakugo and Deku having that massive fight.
I thought it was
like both of them about to punch or something like that. And it's just, or no, it was
Todoroki. And
that's right.
And Deku when he's pushing him to accept his true nature of being, hey, just because your dad's a douche doesn't mean that you are inherently are, and that fire makes you a douche, dude. And embrace
that ultimate fire against him going at it in that scene was
it's like, pretty cool
for me. I was like,
it was a good one.
Just boosh, and I love it too. Then what was it's Mr. Aizawa's like, well, that explosion came from because there was hot air and cold air compressing, so it just kind of did. And I was just like sitting there going, like, after seeing that, just hearing his explanation all dry and deadpan.
And that's why the show is so good too, because that whole I'm pretty sure that's the part we're talking about. But you know, the action is the battle, but the emotion was the discussion happening between the two. Yes. And that's what makes it so good. It's not just like, you know, these characters going
fighting for fighting's sake,
and then it's like yelling and stuff, like, you know, a little bit Black Clover if you've seen it, but a lot of yelling in that show, and I do enjoy the show, but a lot of yelling in it. And so I like in this show, well, okay, Bakugo yells a lot, but Right, pretty much.
Because what does he want to call him? What was it like? We got to pick a superhero name. Murder, evil, die, or whatever it is. He's like murder, death, guy, and you're like, that you can't. You're a hero, evil, die person. No, Bakugo, pick something else that maybe doesn't have die, murder, death, destroyer. Like,
yeah, he's like the kid who's like trying to be edgy, and they're like, oh, if I put Satan in my name, it'll sound edgy. You're like, no. I mean, like, I guess a little, but like, no. So yeah, that's the kind of, the parts of this, like I said, it's just, the character stuff. And I haven't watched the next episode, so I don't know the repercussions of all the, because the end of it's just, essentially, like I said, the end of this one is just him defeating the guy. And overall, and like I said, Night Eye's realization, like I said, just hits you so good. And so that's why for me, this episode was just gorgeous. Like I said, across the board. I don't have any like criticism of it. There's really nothing wrong, in the sense of he's the main character of the show. So you could argue if you want him to be the main character of the show. I know people probably do argue that, versus like Lemillion or something like that, being a thing.
Yeah,
But
probably.
I like their dynamic. Like I said, I honestly, I think the power trio of them, like him, Todoroki, the running guy, I forget his name too. There's a couple of those main guys that are just so good, and even the girl can create clone things from anything. Like when she's on full blast, that's like your power team, man. They're like literally the group of them when they get power. The one that I hope they up her power set. Like this is slightly non-critique of the show, or non of this episode is the Gravity Girl. I just spaced her name too. I spaced all her names. I need to
Ochako.
I would love to see her up her power on a level that she can actually increase gravity. Would be a fun one for her.
That would have been the honest thing. Like instead of her being able to touch someone and they float, then she can touch someone and make their personal gravity.
Yeah,
that would be like either like you said, either than strengthening the gravitational pull of things. I think would be a good kind of just normal step up for her powers. Like what it would make.
Yeah,
sense.
I feel like they haven't. I feel like if an in character, I feel like hasn't been allowed for being a kind of a main secondary character. If that, you have your kind of A characters and she's probably like a B plus character in the sense of like importance. There's it's a large cast, so I'd still probably put her pretty high. I would definitely like to see her powers expanded. I was kind of hoping they would, because especially with her being one of the main ones in this arc that were in the class. I mean, only 2 of the classmates came in the arc with them. Or 3, right. Sorry, there's 3 total. And so I was kind of hoping they would up her power game, and I hope that in the future they do up her power game more, because I like her as a character, but she's not worthless, but she's kind of falling onto that edge here. And in the battle, like this level battle,
she honestly is kind of the only one.
Yeah, and in the battle, and in the battle of this power level, she is worthless. Like I don't think she would have, like in this kind of battle, I don't think she'd, other than being a supporting person in this one, like maybe she'll be a supporter. In this battle, she would have no value that I can think of, like in the sense of this is like a full. If you touch the guy, she has to touch the guy. Well, if you touch the guy, he freaking will just hit you and wipe you off the face of the earth type thing. Granted, Deku's powerful enough and fast enough to do it, but that's kind of his ability. So it'd be cool for her to be able to maybe not have to touch somebody and increase their gravity or something of that nature. Would be, I think, a good, again, I don't know if that happens in the manga, so she might never up her power. And so if you've read the manga, forgive me, I have no idea. But I think that it'd be interesting to see her up her power game would be cool.
I would agree.
But other than that, like I said, this episode, if I was to, this is one of those episodes, Game of Thrones, like the last season was pretty bad for most people. And it kind of makes it a show that you almost can't recommend it. Or there's always, or even like another example that's probably even more universally agreed. How I Met Your Mother, the last season and the last episode specifically, pretty makes the show unwatchable. For me, it makes it a show that I'm like, I can't even watch this anymore because they just ruined it so bad. This is one of those episodes that's the exact opposite for me.
Yes.
This is the episode I go, you know what? Like I said, even if you don't, it kind of falls into Doctor Who. Just stop at season 7 because the last ones are bad. Watch the show. Like I said, this show, this has what they've done with it. It's worth watching, 70 episodes because especially in the shonen genre, because I compare it to like something like Black Clover, where I think we're in episode like 180 right now or something. And I feel like less has happened in it for the characters. And in this one, yeah, this was a kind of a longer arc, I guess, but it's been a great arc. I heard good things about this arc before the season came out, and I definitely agree. Like this arc, just spectacular writing, spectacular character. I love them all, and like I said, it's interesting to see them able to pull All Might out of the story for a little bit. And I think that's great. Pulling some of the classmates out of the story for a bit, pulling All Might out of the story, pulling the school environment out of it for a bit. And when we go back to it, we're like, ooh, it's almost like we're on an adventure. And then we can come back home to our little safe space, our little warm campfire.
Right, exactly.
And enjoy that. And we know there's going to be more adventures and danger, but there's just this nice little ability to see something outside.
Stakes. Yeah, you can go from high stakes outside the protected world of the school, quote unquote protected world of the school, and allow them to really get into that. But then, like you said, then can be able to go back to the school as always. Then education and then growing of their power, growing of their mentalities, of their strategy, their everything. Because that was one thing that because I know, like I said, I'd written down, like a few, like the elements of the story that I enjoyed in one way or another. I think we kind of touched on them.
But go ahead.
But as like that was one of my first one I had on there was, this is not a chosen one story, and I appreciate that. Although in the sense that yes, All Might chooses to give the power to Deku, this isn't you're the chosen one, you're the most powerful. It's gonna come to you. Here's the gift. Again, because it's like throughout the show, it's always about growth. It's about growth for every single
training,
character.
growth. It's a struggle. He definitely doesn't, even though he's been given the power, he doesn't just get to own the power.
The best. Yes.
Yeah,
and so I appreciate it because it's like the whole chosen one is just overdone, I think, too much now. It's another trope of like, well, how do we make a powerful character? Well, we'll make him the chosen one.
I'd agree with that. Right. Yeah.
So continuing on with that, in that, I put my second part of that was, no one is number one yet in this story. Out of our classmate heroes, no one's number one yet. No one is really cemented in some sense that you're like, they're clearly the most powerful person here. Like, obviously we're supposed to know that Deku in the end will be, but, and kind of what I put into it, I said, no one is number one, circumstances equal outcome. Because you've seen throughout this show that a matchup between two of the most powerful people might be this awesome matchup, but then they're matched up against someone who wrecks them. Because it's like, and we know it's not based on power, but it's also based on strategy, understanding, and then them growing of how to know how to use their quirks. And I appreciate that because it's like, that's what I love about like when Bakugo loses to Deku that first time for the their school training of trying to get the nuclear bomb, and he gets pissed off, he's all mad. But then I love that his next moment when it is Shido, half ice, half fire,
right?
Endeavor's kid. Then he has that moment again where he goes, I was pissed off because I couldn't beat you, but then I realized I couldn't beat him either. He would have beat me. And I like that because it's like, it was even in that sense of Bakugo himself already going, I'm not the best. And you were kind of sitting there going like, well, he seems like the most powerful. In the classroom at the time frame, Bakugo seemed the most powerful, but it was cool that even at that moment, he kind of gets, beaten by Deku out because of strategy and smarts. But then again, another person comes up and he kind of goes, my power, I don't even feel like I could beat him. So I like that there is not a sense of like I said, obviously there's people we're supposed to know are the more powerful ones, but at the same time, I never feel like it's like you said, other than Ochako for the gravity, everyone else is like, you're useful in situations, and she is too. She clearly is like, all of them can be useful and would be.
I just want to see her up. I just want to see her powered up here. I think is just what I mean.
But I guess the one way I could say it is like in the sense of as a comparison, rock paper scissors. And let's put just because you might be rock, so you're able to beat the scissors, but then there's another character that kind of has the quirk that's more of a paper, quote unquote, to your rock, and you're able to and that's where I do enjoy the show. For that. So that was one part. My second part of it that why I enjoy the show in general, and again, we've talked about a lot, layered characters. These characters are dimensional characters. They're not one dimension characters with, I have a quirk and here's my quirk and this is what I do. And, you know, for a lot of these characters too, we're actually getting to see. And again, that's where, like I said, that, you know, sometimes it's hard to do for other media because you can't always have flashbacks like anime love to do, which, you know, I have no problem with it because for an anime, it works. It makes sense. It's a great way of being able to do it. But having these characters, then, like I said, you first see Bakugo and you're like, oh, God, he's kind of a jerk. He's an angry guy. Then you get to understand his motivations a little bit more. You're seeing a few of the, I think, like, the 3 people who are all recommended. At first, you're kind of like, oh, okay. But then you get to hear their backstory again. You're getting to understand these characters. And I'm like, I always will appreciate that. And the second part of that, I'm kind of like what I said earlier, same end game, different motives and different behaviors because of it.
Mm-hmm.
And but you can always, like, because I understand where all these characters are coming from, trying to be a hero. And then you get to hear of, like, their personal backstory. Like, you know, obviously Deku's what it is. I want to be the hero that makes people, I want to be the smiling hero that's keeping people safe. Okay. You have Ochako. I want to be able to become a hero so I can help my family. So I can do that kind of stuff. You have Bakugo himself. I want to be the number one hero to help people. Obviously, he kind of comes from it in a weird way, but you're like, okay. You have Red Riot. For him, again, another character where you're like, okay, I kind of like, you were hanging around with Bakugo. Then I find out you're actually a really
chill guy.
Chill, morally strong guy. Yeah. It was like, and that will lead into my final one, emotion. And I put on here, you made me laugh, you made me cry, you moved me. And
you moved me, Bob.
You moved me, Bob. Yeah, VeggieTales. There you go. Yeah.
Who's seen that? You can leave a like.
Yes, if you know that.
Come on, people. We know everyone likes that. That stuff is hilarious.
Everyone, we all know that if I started singing the VeggieTales song, you guys would all start it up too.
It's true.
Okay. But I'd say obviously there's a few parts of the show that gave me that moment, but to it, so I can finally kind of mention it to a character that I kind of enjoyed as just a side character, Red Riot. And then you got to those few episodes before 76 here where he and Fat Gum. First off, you didn't even realize that he jumped in front to save Aizawa as well as Fat Gum, which was really, it's like, it's simple, but again, it showed this, it's like, it showed why the 1A class though too is so much ahead of 1B and why they are already stronger, kind of, because it's like, they don't freeze they don't freeze from action.
Yeah, they're in the generic level. They are an OP class in general, let's say. But in the secondary level, they have taken to all their challenges with growth. So they've been put into situations that really suck, but they've been allowed to grow with it in the story too. And so you guys kind of have this almost like war burdened class that's been, you know, on the battlegrounds versus you're like, oh, we're training, and you're like, yeah. You haven't been in the trenches, boys. We've been in the trenches type feel.
They can shoot BBs over your head all you want, but until you actually hear the sound of a real bullet flying next to you.
Yeah, it's pretty much, they've been legitimate life and death situations so far. And again, the Class B thing is like a D storyline, I guess, in the story. I don't know if that's bigger in the manga.
If anything, they're using that because they might be bringing up a few more characters for,
I mean, in
growing it, but.
Yeah, I don't know what, like I said, one thing I don't know in this series is, so we're in season 4 right now. I don't know how many seasons they plan on having. I don't know if this, in the behind this, like I said, on the meta sense, I don't know if this is the show that they plan on having, 20 seasons on, or if this is like, oh, it's gonna be a 10-run show or an 8-run show type thing. Because in the anime world, it could be either. Who knows? I mean, I just finished watching Full Metal Panic. I'll be doing a review here on that pretty soon. But I mean, the first season's 2002, I believe. Second season's 2011, 2012, I think, and then the last season's 2018. So I mean, and then you have things like that are super popular shows like No Game, No Life, who still haven't had a second season, or So you have these shows which had had kind of consecutive, but who knows what the run life on it. Now, I will say that this show is probably one of the most cross country or multicultural, I guess, shows that kind of works very for very American audience. So I think it'll hold on. Because
here's the thing, I know a lot of Americans. Like I said, there's a lot of people. If I hear a name that I have heard consistently since I started watching anime, was My Hero Academia.
Yeah, I think some of the first shows
was
Attack on Titan.
Attack on Titan.
Then My Hero.
Yep.
Have been big ones. I'm sure there's some other ones in there that were kind of mainstream.
Fairy Tale. I think Fairy Tale is one that I hear a lot of people also
Really?
like.
That's interesting.
Yes.
I actually quite like Fairy Tale. If there's it gets a lot of hate, but mostly because its magic system is garbage in the sense of that it's definitely the how are you stronger? Love and friendship pretty much is why you
the
win.
Harry Potter way.
A little bit. However, at the same time, if I had to pick a world to be isekai'd into, in the sense of if that was an option, I'd probably land in the fairy tale world because have you seen Fairy Tale?
I haven't actually.
Okay.
I need to watch it.
I'll say, without giving spoilers, I just will say that the guild level and that the camaraderie of the characters is definitely enviable and something that I wish people in real life had more of because they truly like each other as people generally. And there's some rivalries and stuff, but in the sense of it, I'm like, I would hang out with this group of people. No problem at all. I would go hang out at their guild hall if I was allowed and just be like, just hang it out, guys, because I like who you are. And I can definitely say it's not every show that I like. I'd be like that. There's a lot of the characters. I do like the characters in it. But you're like, would I really want to hang out with you guys? Or would you guys be a bad influence on me or something of that nature? Or would I die? Because some of the shows are like, you die. There's some shows there, death is a very big thing, and Fairy Tale death is not really a thing. And the My Hero does have the camaraderie element. Like I said, it's really good.
Yes, it does.
Like I said, just solid show. So
that's
already
to finish. Well, I was gonna say to finish off that point.
Go ahead.
Again, like I said, if you haven't already got, like I agree with Joel completely. If you haven't already got to season 4, get to season 4 because, like I said, there was multiple episodes within that season. If you were not gonna cry at then 76 episode, you should be crying at the Fat Gum Red Riot fight with him beating the massive punching dude and that whole thing, because I'm sorry, that had me.
That was good.
That honestly, because it was like just the simple fact at first, like he's fighting himself, going like, I said I wasn't gonna freeze in this anymore. He extra hardened himself. He takes those blasts. And it really was that point when Fat Gum's holding him, and he's like, "You did good, kid. Like you did it." And I'm just sitting there going, like,
"That's so good.
You're making me feel like
you're like the feels." This? No, it's true.
I can't do it.
So good. Well, also too, I think it was hilarious when like Fat Gum is like this handsome dude. He's like,
that was like the funniest part. I know when he gets done, he's like, "Hey," and he's like, "What?
Fat
You're
Gum?
Not Fat Gum." He's like, "It's me, Fat Gum."
And you're like,
he's like, "No."
You're like,
I had that look. I was like,
Brad. He like is a Brad Pitt, Tom Cruise like looking dude, and you're like, what?
He's like, I just get fat so I can take the punches, man.
You're like, that's my power, and you're like, oh man, I'm sorry. I mean, I guess in that power world, nothing really matters in the sense like the one dragon chick is freaking kind of cool too. Like I said, across the board, this show is great. So like I said, if you haven't seen the show, and if you haven't, obviously we spoiled this entire episode if you gotten to this far. We warned you. If you didn't listen, we warned you. But even then, by the time you get through all the stuff, you'll forget most of it, and then you'll be like, oh my gosh, this is also amazing, because I think the rewatchability, I know I've rewatched all the first 3 seasons twice. I've gotten through it, and it's just really enjoyable. I think I enjoyed it more the second time. Some shows, it's a grudge to get through a second rewatch on it. My Hero is definitely not one of those ones. I would say, like I said, I think my biggest negative for the show is Bakugo, to be honest. He just grates on me because he's just so angry all the time, and he's
always angry.
Irritates me. Just because he's like, he gets a smackdown from people here and there, and I appreciate that. But I wouldn't mind him being toned down a little. So
I'd like him to maybe finally learn from those smackdowns.
Yes, I would like that. Just tone down. It was funny when they show his parents, and it's like, his mom's like,
his mom's a jerk,
just like him, and you're like, I see where I came from. So yeah,
the husband, sweetie, you shouldn't be doing that. I'm still sitting there like,
oh, that's why. Got it. Your mom's a nutcase. Got it. So and all that kind of stuff. It's
please take him out of here. We don't want him in our house anymore. Right. Get rid of the sucker.
Right. That was the greatest. That was the other one, man. I like I said, I have a thing I want to do, and I'll probably put together more here. But it's like visceral moments of anime, and and like I said, there's a couple, and the other one that, like I said, this episode is a visceral moment of anime. This show specifically, another moment that was like, oh man, I literally had tears, was when All Might is like bowing to his mom, to Midoriya's mom.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that was such a surprise. Like that was one of those ones that you're like, of course his mom's gonna be like, yeah, you can go, and she's like, no, you can't go, and you're like, what? He can't go, and you're like, this can't be happening, and like the reasoning behind it was solid. Like I totally understand where she's coming from.
It was an honest reasoning. So yeah, it wasn't like the sense of like, oh, we're gonna have her say no just so we can have her say no. You were kind of like. And again, she already mentioned those things like, I don't know if I can take this the last time that it got her hurt. Deku, she said
so
she's like, I don't know if I can take this. This is hard for me. So it was like, it wasn't coming out of left field from nowhere. And then it was, and then you have this beautiful moment of All Might, the mightiest hero, bowing to her and saying, I will teach her, humbling himself.
So humble. Oh, I love All Might too.
The ultimate hero humbling himself. And you're like,
I freaking love All Might.
Hey, American writers, that's how you do it. Just so you know, that's how you actually make a character worthwhile.
So good. He is such a good. I said across the board, this show is great characters. I was trying to think of something else that was like interesting with that part, but yeah, that part was just so good.
Yes.
That's the thing. Oh, I sent you a picture on the text. So here we go. We're gonna go to general text. I sent you a picture on text, and it's the screenshot that's currently up on the screen, and it's Deku with his like lightning hair, and I'm not sure if what the white stuff is that his hair, or is that her hair? Oh, that's her hair.
That's
interesting.
Her hair. Yeah, that's her.
So
hair
I just was looking. I see her hand on his shoulder now. Like, wait, yeah. Oh, his foot now. I was looking at it, but I was like, oh, it's interesting because the reason it struck me this frame here is it has a lot of similarities to All Might with his hair, and and so I'm not sure if this is a artistic choice here or a foreshadowing choice or a due to his power level choice type thing. Right. Like I don't know
it's almost like like Dragon Ball Z when they go Super Saiyan,
like the hair something like that. Because All Might hair does have his little thing that when he's in his mode, he has like the little like ear, almost front ears thing going, and then you have like his down, his hair is down, and so I'm curious on because how All Might transformations goes from like skinny guy to big guy type thing, and I'm wondering if Deku will ever have that, or if he'll have some level of physical transformation when he goes into full power over his time, or if like his hair will have some interesting transformation too, or something like that.
Well, but that actually being said though, I love that first scene where they make the superhero costume and Deku makes his costume, and All Might's like,
I also love the scene.
Obvious. Right? So obvious.
Stop it.
He's like, you have a big smile and 2 ears. Are you kidding me? It looks just like me.
So funny. Well, and honestly, I didn't even realize that, to be honest, until he said it. I'm like, that's hilarious.
I didn't think about it too much. I was like, oh, okay, it's got the 2 ears. I was like, it's kind of weird that it looks like a bunny. And then All Might says it, and I'm like, oh, he's not going for a bunny. Like, he's kind of going for his own version of All Might.
Oh. It's kind of like the other thing that's hilarious. When Lemillion is introducing him to Night Eye, and he's like, and he's like, he's not funny. He's not funny. Red alert. And I'm like, that's hilarious because
what he does is like, I am here. You're going to make fun of All Might? That's not even how his wrinkles look. That's my favorite part, though, because he gets mad, but then his madness is because he's like, it's not even accurate.
Right, and then they just discussing it. So
then I love it. He's like, actually, no, the face is from when he was doing this, and he had the lemon in his eyes, or the citrus in the vinegar,
right?
Because the lady turned it into vinegar, so he's just squinting, and he's like, oh yeah, you're right. I'm like, that's great.
It's pretty funny. Like, I don't understand, like his weird assistant. You're like, he is a weird guy, but it's hilarious.
He's
an odd one, but it's funny.
Well, and again, that's what I love about animes, because sometimes you have a character that you think is gonna be this one-dimensional character of something, and then you go, wait, you're telling me the super serious guy is a weirdo with humor,
right?
And he has a tickle chamber,
right? Because he's like
tickle torture chamber for them, because he's like, you didn't make it funny, so I'm gonna tickle you, and you're like,
yeah,
like, okay, like, it's always great,
and it's right on the edge of like,
this is ridiculous, but I kind of like,
and also it's like slightly inappropriate.
Well,
there's one I was watching recently. We'll talk about it later. I'll have you watch it. I'm at least going to do a review on it. I forget what it's called, to be honest. But essentially, like, what is it called? Whatever. It doesn't important. But essentially, the characters have a tattoo like that has their life thing on it. It's a new show for this year. I say if someone got this far into it, just check it out. It's on Funimation. But essentially, it's the characters have essentially like their life goals as a tattoo on them, and of course, this character has hers on her inner thigh. So like,
of course,
and you're like, this is slightly like you're watching this and like, oh, this premise is interesting, but you're like, of course, anime, only anime, man, only anime. It's kind of like the random scene where the guy with the balls on his head when he's like,
I was just about to say when he's, I mean, he is, of course, you have to always have the one guy who's the perv, but he's like, oh, she's touching my balls.
You're like, there's a couple, there's some funny stuff that you're like child humor, and you're like,
well, my personal favorite though is where he does break the fourth wall because it's like all the girls walking. He looks over at the kind of the camera, and he's like, I love this school.
right. No, there's some funny things in it. Like I said, you gotta appreciate the humor when it's given to you.
Yes.
And luckily, for parents out there, I was talking to some parents recently, and it was actually quite insightful about how a lot of things aren't really child friendly anymore in a lot of shows. So hopefully do some, child friendly review shows, because there's a show I watched recently that's not child friendly, and it's super not child friendly. I'll tell you off the air.
Okay.
Because it's gonna be one in my 3, and I'll be like, not even talk about it in this one. So watch out for future videos, because I'll talk about it there. That's, like I said, super not child friendly. But shows like this, I'm like, okay, young adult, I would say, 10 up, depending on your child's maturity level. Right. Most stuff would probably go over their head if there was a little innuendo, but I would definitely consider just like a PG-12 show type thing. I wouldn't call it PG-13. Maybe the violence level is, age appropriate to what your child's used to type thing.
Yeah.
But I feel like the lessons of the show are pretty solid. They're not pushing things. I was talking to someone about some of our shows where a lot of times shows have kind of questionable lessons in it.
Yes.
Or the material they're talking about, you're like, ooh, I don't know if that's a lesson you should psychologically teach a child. Like, there was literally a show, I'm not going to even get into the show, but that was like almost teaching psychological manipulation of like how to manipulate somebody into getting your way. And I was like, this is kind of questionable to be teaching, 7-year-olds type thing, young adults. And so I feel like the show like this is more about, like I said, honor, honesty, truth, heroicness, courage, virtue. I think it's a word. There's a guy. If you haven't checked his channel out, he's more Left Foot Media. Really good stuff. But he comes. I think he's a Christian guy out of New Zealand, I believe, and he talks about a lot of like virtue is one of his words he uses, and I think it's a great choice of words because it denotes a lot of important things in the world, and it has a lot of like good denotations in it. And for those that haven't been in school a long time, denotation is the actual definition of a word. Connotation is what it means to society. So the actual definition is very strong. And so I'd say the connotation is too, virtuous type thing,
Right.
It gets used in kind of a mocking way nowadays, virtue signaling, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Good or bad on that kind of topic. But in a sense, legitimate virtue is a good thing, and I think that's, in a show like this, I feel like the characters overall are virtuous people, like All Might and Deku and Lemillion and a lot of them are trying for it. And the ones that aren't, they're all flawed people, just like people in real life. They're not perfect. And I think that's a cool thing too, because they all have doubts that are real doubts. They're not like, oh, is someone going to think I'm pretty? I don't think anybody's ever said in the show. I could be wrong on that. Because those are the things
I think the only person who makes a comment about her looks is the invisible chick, which is the point.
Right. And
don't look at me when I'm taking off my clothes. Okay, I want an invisible chick.
Right. Then it's also funny. But I think that's the thing in a lot of media nowadays is it doesn't have the virtuous aspect of it. And or does
if they
care
do,
about it.
it's well, or if it is, it's like you're saying, it's either virtue signaling, or it's contrived virtue. It's false virtue.
Yeah, it's just like it's modern politics, and modern politics won't last because that's just history of the world, right?
Yeah, exactly.
There's things that throughout history are positive, look at like literally like the Ten Commandments and stuff, and even if you take out like the God stuff, right? You said, okay, let's pull out the God parts of the Ten Commandments, and you're like, oh, don't lie, don't murder, respect your parents.
Don't covet your neighbor's stuff. Respect your parents. Don't kill. Don't steal. Don't bear false witness.
Yeah, it's things that I'm like, oh.
I mean, even in the sense of not wanting to put in the God in there, the sense of saying don't take false idols is still an important thing. Don't put idols in front of things that should be important to you. Don't make idols out of things that aren't important.
Totally, yeah, and I think that's valuable for anybody who's if you be careful what you put on a pedestal. In the end, I think is a valuable lesson for any or important thing for anybody, because isn't that like almost literally the lesson of every Christmas movie, which is the character's like, all I do is work, and they're like, well, what's on the pedestal? My work. And then they go, you know what? Actually, I should care about my family. And they're like, yeah, you should maybe.
Exactly.
Type thing. But, and not to get too far into stuff, but, it's like the positive stuff that, we're going to try to do on this channel. Not just, like I said, not just to be negative, find the important things in life. And that's why we won't really review things that are terrible anime. Again, as you said, I'll be like, if it's a bad run of anime and shows, I'll be like 5 in a row. In the sense of like, these are 5 I watched, and yeah, these are questionable ones. I'm not going to do full breakdowns, because if it doesn't interest me within 4 or 5 episodes, I'm not going to watch it.
Yeah, exactly.
Or if it's just terribly rated on all, and just no, my anime list, if you don't know, it's pretty cool for tracking what you watch.
Yes.
You can find me on there on Westfox, and you can see all the time I spend watching anime, which is a lot when I'm not working, which is never, technically. I mean, I'm always working. Anyway, I'm always working, but then I'm working on different things. But anyway, thank you. I don't know, because it's funny to whisper into stuff. And I guess the sake's kicking in. Just kidding. But no, right? No, like I said, literally, they said this is anime with sake. Sometimes there's, like I said, the one show I was talking about that's really adult, I'll be like, yep, this show needs a full bottle. Maybe 2, because oh my goodness, I have a lot of opinions on this one, and I'm not even sure what to say about it. But thank you for joining me today, Christopher, on today's episode of Westfox, talking about My Hero Academia.
Certainly.
We look forward to doing more anime stuff. I don't know what we're going to talk about next. We'll probably get into more episodes. Generally, I won't do an episode by episode review. And this obviously extended a little more than just the episode, as we've gone on for about an hour and 20 minutes, which is amazing, because, we like talking about this stuff. That's why we're doing this, because we love talking about this stuff, and hopefully you will enjoy our talking as well. But yeah, we done about, I won't do a review on every episode, because that's not really my thing. But an episode like this I felt was a combination episode. Took all the best elements of the show, brought them together, and it was a climactic finale.
It gave you a masterpiece.
Oh, spectacular, worth it. So, haven't seen the show, go watch it. I can't recommend it more. If you don't watch anime and you've made it this far and you're like, what's a show I should watch? I would say this one's pretty user friendly. There's shows out there that are not user friendly, and not because of adult material, but due to the fact that they are strange if you're not used to watching shows like this.
I will give one recommendation for those, one that I have truly enjoyed. Actually, I'll give 2 recommendations, depending. More on a teenage, or at least a younger, not younger, but at least like a middle ground. You will enjoy Assassination Classroom.
I've heard that's really good.
One that again also gives me a lot of feels. And then if you're looking for something in a more, maybe a grungy or maybe a little bit darker theme in that sense, do Death Note. If you have not watched an anime and you're kind of maybe with something that was a little bit of tension and a little bit of drama and some stuff going on there, Death Note is good. Do not watch the American movie on Netflix, or if you do, you will be in for a bad time.
Yeah, the movie's terrible. Yeah, don't watch. If you watch the movie and you're like, oh, I wonder if this is good, the movie's terrible.
Yes, don't watch it.
I'm trying to think of anything else important about this. Any other recommendations? Well, we'll do more recommendations later, but those are the ones top of our head. Thank you for joining us here in West Fox. Have an amazing night or amazing morning, depending on watching this, or afternoon, who knows. And we'll talk to you next time. Have a great night.